Harkins, I'm the manager of operations for the Lakeside Heritage Society. Well, thank you. The first thing I want to say is a huge thank you to everyone who was involved last weekend with our ice cream social. For everybody who donated a cake, which we had a lot of donations, for everyone who donated, who helped cut cakes and hand them out whenever it was so hot, I know in those tents. And even if you just purchased a cake and ate it and joined us for that activity, we were happy to have you. We're glad to be having that event again and hopefully be picking up steam and continuing that event in the future. The second thing, I made a list today so that I don't forget everything. The second thing, Kathy Venema has a sign-up sheet in the corner over here, only at this desk, for helping out at the Labor Day sale. So that will start on the Monday. Yes, the Monday before, so the load-in to get everything into South Auditorium for our Labor Day sale, including the actual sale itself and manning the tables and helping with the whole event. So if you would like to volunteer, we'd really appreciate it, and the sign-up sheet's in the back there, or you can also contact me or Kathy during the week. We're always looking for sign-ups. The third thing, we are continuing registration for our Artist Storytelling Conference, which will be this October. It's going to be October 26th. to 28th. We do have a cap on our registration, so make sure that if you're interested in going, you contact me soon so that we can fit you in for this year. It's going to be a great event. There's a lot of folks coming in from all over the state to talk about public history, archaeology, library studies, all kinds of different things that may sound boring to you, but it's the way that we interpret them, present them to the public to make them interesting for you. So it should be a fun weekend. And then next week we have our annual meeting, the Heritage Society's annual meeting, and we're going to be celebrating 50 years of the Lakeside Heritage Society, which was founded in 1968. And so we're going to be having cake, more cake, and ice cream. We like to celebrate with cake and ice cream. And the program before that is a man who helped with the building of the replica Marblehead Life-Saving Station. So he'll be going over that whole process, and I'm really looking forward to that one. So finally, here we are today. I always look forward to all of our programs, but this one especially. This was actually the first program that I was able to fit into our schedule last year because our presenter stopped in down at the archives last summer, and he said, "Have you ever heard of Camp Fannie?" and started talking about it, and I had no idea. So this is one of those Lakeside mysteries that I think people know, and they walk past the building all the time, but they really don't know the whole history of it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he found today, because I know he's been doing a lot of research. Up until even last week, he found some pretty amazing things, and then he pulled together his PowerPoint too, which I'm sure he'll tell you about. I think he did a great job. So would everyone please join me in welcoming Mr. Knobel.
And special thanks to Dakota, who held my hand when I decided that some slides might be interesting. So I used PowerPoint. And it dawned on me that throughout most of my career I had a staff. So when I wanted a PowerPoint, I said, "Staff, I need a PowerPoint." Suddenly no staff, and Tino refused to be staff. So I went down and Dakota held my hand for the first couple slides, and I did it all myself, so I feel very proud of this. Well, let me jump right into this. When Tina and I retired after my 15 years as president of Denison University down in Granville in the hills 28 miles east of Columbus, for those whole 15 years, when I went out in the morning to pick up my morning paper out on the front stoop, I could look right down Broadway, the main east-west street of the town, and I could see, or at least imagine I could see, about 3.5 blocks away, a boulder with a commemorative plaque that commemorated the Fannie Doane home for the children of Baptist missionaries, which existed from 1909 to 1949. In 2015, Tina and I bought our new cottage. Well, let me go back here. There's Monomoy Place, the historic president's residence at Denison. So I walk out of the front stoop, look down the street, see this boulder commemorating the Fannie Doane home for Baptist missionaries' children. 2015, Tina and I bought a new cottage at Lakeside, and I walk out on my front porch, and I look a block and a half to my left, and there is the remnants of Camp Fannie Doane for the children of Baptist missionaries. The Fannie Doane home, there's the rock. The Fannie Doane home in Granville was abandoned in 1949, taken over by Denison University, and then razed in 1974. And in its place are 4 ranch-style condominiums. But Camp Fannie Doane lives in our own Hilltop House at Lakeside, and the Hilltop House Annex, which was added to the original Fannie Doane cottage built in 1929, the winter of 1929-30. And the annex, which was added for older children in 1935, along with a garage, which still exists there as well. And as you know, these 2 buildings still serve groups of Lakesiders, particularly youth groups of all kinds. And Tina and I have kept our eye on Hilltop House this summer, and it continues to be well used by church institutes and camps. There was a tennis team there last week, and occasionally by large family groups that use the buildings. I was tempted to call this talk Baptists at Methodist Lakeside, oh my. but then I was reminded, and it's worth reminding us all, that that Lakeside has a long history of ecumenism, as well as youth programming. And this is a good reminder of that. In fact, in 1896, in November, the Lakeside Daily News, the paper at the time, wrote, among the well-known Baptists of the state who we notice on the grounds of Lakeside is the Reverend D.D. Purinton, LLD, president of Denison University. He was there for the Baptist Assembly that was taking place on the grounds in 1896. The Epworth Herald, which was the paper of the Epworth League, which was the Methodist program for young adults, founded in 1889, approvingly reported in its newspaper in 1892 that, quote, the young Baptists love an inspiring assembly at Lakeside, Ohio. And there was the Ecumenical Society of Christian Endeavor, which was a group founded in 1881, which really became the national progenitor of what we think of modern youth work within the church. And most of the mainline Protestant denominations sort of took their cue for creating programs for what we think of as high school students from the Christian Endeavor. They held their organizational meetings here in the summertime, as did the other Chautauquas, especially Bayview in Michigan. I suppose the most present reminder of the ecumenism of activities at Lakeside is the Lutheran Chautauqua. This still takes place usually for 2 weeks in June. But Lutherans are coming here back in the 1920s. In the 20s, they were Congregationalists, the Congregational Summer School and Conference. In 1931, a Disciples of Christ Institute. In 1934, the United Presbyterian Young People. In 1935, the Christian Union, which is a small denomination, Christian Union Young People's Convention. There's a long history of ecumenism, and particularly as it relates to youth programming at Lakeside. There have been youth camps of various kinds. Camp Wesleyan, started to take place in 1914 as an outgrowth of the Women's Foreign Mission Society. They put on programs at Lakeside of returned missionaries, and sometimes their pupils from around the world, on international issues and international cultural issues. Initially, it was held at the Erie View Inn, which later on in 1920 became the Mary Ellen. And some of you remember the Mary Ellen, as I do as a child, which was finally taken down in the early 1960s. In 1922, it moved to the Braithwaite Homestead, which was at 3rd and Cedar, and was a building constructed to hold up to 150 people. I don't think to sleep 150 people, but 150 people to meet. In 1939, it was turned back over to Lakeside by the Women's Foreign Mission Society, and you can barely see, its stone pillars eventually were incorporated into a cottage that still exists on the ground. So if you go down 3rd, not in 3rd and Cedar, 3rd and Elm, if you go all the way down towards 3rd and Elm, you'll see an unusual porch that was built out of the remnants of what had been served as Camp Wesleyan. in the teens and the 20s. Of course, Lahomis was built in 1928 for the Women's Home Missionary Society and served particularly youth groups as well as women's groups for years. And then there was a Camp Boyville for a while between 1914 and 1922, up essentially where the swimming pool is today. It was an ecumenical camp for boy leadership of a group called the Modern Knights of St. Paul. Many of these camps wound up on the thinly populated south end of our campus, because already by the time of the First World War, tennis courts were occurring there, was a ball field, not too far away was the Chapel in the Woods already. In 1919, the Epworth Lodge was built, and of course there was the South Auditorium, the German auditorium from the 1880s. So there were a variety of facilities that could be put to use by youth camps. So what was the Fannie Doane home, which is what we have to understand before we know what Camp Fannie Doane was and where it came from, and something about William Howard Doane, who gave the money for both of these facilities. In 1813, a fellow by the name of Adoniram Judson and his wife Anne, who were New England Baptists, went out as missionaries to Rangoon, Burma. He was anxious about what he called Asia's idolatrous myriads. Lots of people worshiping idols. The original idea, the Judsons thought they'd go to British India. But the British rulers of India thought that they were just likely to stir up trouble among the native Hindu and Muslim populations, and sort of asked them to go elsewhere. So they went to Burma, which was also under loose British control, but a little more loosely, and the British government was less worried about them. In time, dozens of additional Baptist missionaries went on out, primarily representing what became the American Baptist Convention, the Northern Baptists, after the Southern Baptists left in the 1840s over the slavery issue. Dozens went out, especially to Burma, and they served all over Burma, but particularly in the north and the borderlands along the Chinese border. They were the most successful of all of the Christian denominations in conversions. About 60% of all Burmese who claimed to be converted to Christianity claimed to be Baptists. They were there until the early 1960s. In the early 1960s, a nationalist regime gained power in Burma and was nervous particularly about the possibility of uprisings along its fringe areas, right where the Baptist missionaries were, and decided that a way to unify the country was to try to unify it around religion. And so they undertook a Buddhification campaign. And they began to run other representatives of other faith traditions out of Burma. And so by the early 1960s, most Christian missionary groups were gone from Burma. The Baptist Foreign Missionary Society was created because of a problem that became apparent pretty early on. Frequently, the missionaries would go out as couples, as married couples. They found they could reach men and women in communities more easily. And not surprisingly, they often wound up with children, oftentimes born abroad, born while they were in Burma, or other places, because there were other Baptist missions in places like the Congo and in China. And because of poor health care, poor sanitation, lack of access to hospitals, and the need to educate their children, most of them wanted them to eventually wind up in American colleges, there was kind of a need to take children once they reached, at least parents felt this, once they reached school age, and send them back to the United States. And so the Baptist Foreign Mission Society created several homes for the children of Baptist missionaries abroad. They created one home in Newton Center, Massachusetts, in about 1880. In 1893, they created a second home in Morgan Park, Illinois. And then the biggest of them was the Fannie Doane home, located in Granville in 1909. They also created some houses for missionaries when they returned on furlough. So there was one in Massachusetts, and there were two in Granville, which would handle these missionary families when they came back on furlough. Gradually, the other children's sites closed, and the Fannie Doane home became the principal one of these surviving homes. The funding for which was provided by William Howard Doane in honor of his wife Frances, or Fannie, not only for the construction of the home but also for its maintenance. I want to say a word about William Howard Doane, who's an interesting guy. He was born in 1832 and lived till 1915. He was born in New England, but by the time of the Civil War, he had relocated to Cincinnati, where he became the CEO of a wildly successful woodworking machinery company. And in fact, in 1889, he received the French Legion of Honor because his woodworking machinery received the Grand Prize at the Paris Exposition of 1889 for the most innovative machinery. And he made a fortune with that company, and did so well at it that he, in turn, was made a president of a Cincinnati bank. He became a director of the Barney and Smith Car Company of Dayton, Ohio, which is a manufacturer of railroad cars, and particularly of interurbans. No Barney cars ran on the Toledo, Port Clinton, and Lakeside, which ran here in